I'm Ken Reid, and it's time for a little hockey card history. Let's face it, these are wild times. We've all been on lockdown, and that means one thing: no haircuts, vicious salads. The hair's out of control. We're doing our best to tame the hair. But you know what? As a society, we've been here before. Hockey, we've been here before. I'm talking about the 1970s. Hair was untamed, but then it was actual style as opposed to this. So we are going to look at the best 70s haircuts in our hockey card history countdown. Just to let you know, this is what I look like in the 70s. Rather well-coiffed little man. Look at the old man, though. That is a sweet 70s look, and Sweet Marie looking just fine. Brother Peter, a little startled. Okay, so we're going to go back to the 1970s, and we're going to start the decade in style. Remember, we're coming off the crew cut 60s. Hockey players didn't exactly get into the hippie thing in the 60s. So we'll start slowly. Great hair from this 70-71 Dennis Hull O-Pee-Chee. And the hair I'm talking about, not necessarily on top of the head, but on the chest. Look at that chest hair on five-time All-Star Dennis Hull. Dennis Hull, beautiful shot. Some said harder than his brother Bobby. He just couldn't hit the net. Dennis Hull finished up his NHL career probably with that chest hair. And 303 NHL goals, also played 4 games in the 72 series. Okay, now, let's get into the salad. Let's get into the hair. For that, we're going to start 75, 76, O-Pee-Chee, Jude Drouin. He has it all. Untamed hair, lovely sideburns. Jude Drouin started his professional career in the Montreal Canadiens organization. Had a fantastic season with the Nova Scotia Voyageurs in 1970. 106 points in 65 games. Those Habs of the 70s, of course. Powerhouse team, so Jude was eventually traded to Minnesota. He actually sat out an entire season to become a free agent and ended up finishing his career with the Winnipeg Jets. Those are beauty sideburns from Jude Drouin. Number 8. Absolutely outstanding. Now, I look at this card, and I can't figure out if there's a beard involved as well. But Stan Gilbertson, 73-74 O-Pee-Chee, that is a do and a half. And, I mean, you got to love the colors of the Seals as well. Stan, as the back of the card notes, was one of the few Americans in the NHL during this time. He actually started his junior career with the Regina Pats. He's the last player in NHL history to score a goal on Christmas Day. And get this, Gilbertson's career was cut short when he was involved in a car accident in the late 70s. He lost part of his lower leg. So quite a career, an ending of a career for Stan Gilbertson. But man, look at that. That is 70s style at its best. Moving on, number 7. Now keep in mind, these haircuts we're looking at, this was the style at the time. Did anybody look better on a 72, 73 O-Pee-Chee than the great Gary Unger? I just want to read you what the back of the card says, because the people at O-Pee-Chee, they knew it as well. They knew they were in the middle of something legendary. Gary is a floppy-haired blonde. Sure is. Great cartoon on the back. Unger, of course, was the NHL's Iron Man at one point. He played in 914 straight games, a fantastic hockey player. And let's face it, Gary Unger, one good-looking dude back in the 70s. Card number 6, we're going to go to the 76-77 O-Pee-Chee set. If you've got it, let it go. Embrace it. As we know, permanents were all the rage for a while in the 70s, even into the 80s. But I think this is au naturel. We're talking about Ernie Hickey of the Minnesota North Stars. Fantastic hair. Love the coral necklace. Of course, those came back in style. And the 2000s as well. But Ernie Hickey, perhaps best known for being involved in a trade from the Montreal Canadiens to the Seals. Involved in that trade was the draft pick that the Canadiens used to pick Guy Lafleur. So a lot of people could say, I guess, Hickey was traded for Guy Lafleur. But look at that cheveux. Absolutely outstanding stuff from Ernie Hickey. Okay, we're moving on to number 5. And as we said from Hickey, if you got it, embrace it. If you're going through changes, embrace it. Back in the day, if guys were going a little thin in the back, and I am as well, they didn't bring it down to the wood. They went with the Captain Stubing look. Noel Price, veteran professional hockey player at this point in 73, 74. You just embrace what's happening. You embrace you go with a bit of a comb over. You have good sideburns as well. Noel Price, 37 years old at the time of this picture, playing for Atlanta. Noel Price bounced around a lot in his NHL career. He was a 3-time winner of the Eddie Shore Award for most outstanding defenseman in the NHL. Not sure Eddie Shore would like those sideburns. But Noel Price, 499 NHL games, 14 goals, played for a ton of teams in the 70s. Okay, talking 70s hockey, talking style. You have to talk about the World Hockey Association. Now, this guy was a huge scorer in junior for the Halifax Junior Canadians. Didn't quite translate to the pros, but he came from Massachusetts, came up to Nova Scotia in the 60s and just put up the points. Look at this pose. Look at this hair. Look at these sideburns. That is a Quaker Oats WHA card. That is Bobby Sheehan. 310 NHL games, 48 goals. Also played in the WHA where he was a 2-time All-Star. That's just so fantastic. That is so 70s. The pose, the gloves. Everybody had those old yellow Cooper gloves back in the day. I know Dr. Dan, who we showed earlier, he rocked those Cooper gloves. Bobby Sheehan, terrific junior scorer. Terrific hair, terrific sideburns. Okay, we're moving on. We're at number 3. Now, this is a guy who started his professional career in the 60s with the Toronto Maple Leafs, got into a few games. His career took him all the way to the 80s when he wrapped up with the Colorado Rockies. So his hair probably went through many changes, over time, much like our hair is going through changes right now. Again, you got to embrace it. I'm thinking this may be a bit of a comb over on Al Smith, 76, 77 O-Pee-Chee. That's a beautiful haircut. Now, Al played, almost 500 games in the NHL, another 260 or so in the WHA, and after he was finished his playing career, became a novelist and a playwright. Passed away in 2002, but that's a pretty interesting career switch for Al Smith, who rocked some beauty hair back on this 76, 77 O-Pee-Chee. Time for number 2. And I know you've been waiting for one card, but we're going to get to that in a second. But time for number 2. The man they called the Buffalo. They called him the Buffalo because of his hair and sideburns. Larry Giroux, Detroit Red Wings, 75, 76. The Buffalo, a.k.a. Buff. This was his only hockey card. Played 274 games in the NHL. Played for Kansas City, St. Louis, the Whalers. Wow, look at that. And, of course, Detroit. Fantastic card. Okay, before we get to number 1, bit of a note. To Dave Crisco, 76, 75. Couldn't find it. Don't know if I have it in my collection. So I know a lot of you thinking that should be number 1. I disagree. To me, this is number 1 for so many reasons. 74, 75, WHA card, number 37. That is Mike Antonovich from Minnesota. Played for the Minnesota Fighting Saints. Speedy forward. Currently a scout in the National Hockey League. He filled me in on the details on this card once upon a time. Went into a scouting meeting, and the boys had the old overhead projector. They projected this card up onto the wall. In the words of Mike Antonovich, these are the exact words he told me in my first book, Hockey Card Stories, I want to find them and burn them all. That is an outstanding card, and Mike's a real good sport when it comes to talking about this because, as we know, styles change over time. I'm sure in a few years we'll be looking at Joe Thornton cards and Brent Burns cards going, what were they thinking? And that's what we can do when we look back at the 70s cards. But these guys, man, from Bobby Sheehan to Al Smith to Noel Price to Mike Antonovich, this was the style at the time. My father can concur. We're untamed now, not because we necessarily want to be. They were untamed in the 70s because that's exactly the way they wanted it.